That's for next time. For now, why don't you upgrade to Unreal Engine 5? Let's find out. About there.
Hey guys, Raymond here, and I've been developing my indie game, Project Feline, in Unreal Engine 4. Ew, Unreal 4. What
Gross.
Is that?
It does have a better logo, though. Like...
Feline in Unreal Engine 4.
Look at that. Look at that logo. Remember when logos were logos? Remember when, like, logos weren't, like, these super flat, boring, just garbage logos? Someone got paid a shitload of money to develop this. Like, way too much money to develop this logo. That's a logo. This is garbage. Anyway. Remember when logos weren't afraid to have shiny parts? I know, right? What a nice time that was. When not everything had to be super flat.
Ew, Unreal 4. What is that? Why? That's disgusting. Why aren't you using the latest and greatest Unreal 5 with all the exciting...
Greatest. Latest, I'll give you. Greatest, you know, debatable.
Rendering cool technology stuff. And look, I know this is a hot take, but I am not upgrading to Unreal 5. Everyone tells me it's easy, but if my game dev journey has taught me anything, is that nothing is ever as simple as just clicking a button. Because
lots of people like to say upgrading is easy because they haven't done any. If you speak to any game dev, any serious way through a project, they are going to tell you that upgrading the engine is going to take quite a bit of time, especially going between major versions. Sometimes minor versions are okay, but if you're going between major versions of the engine, things will break 100% of the time.
Every time I've tried to upgrade my project, even between minor versions of Unreal 4, it always breaks something every time.
And minor versions
can break it. The most severe instance of this happening was when I upgraded between like Unreal 4.26 to 2.7, and in doing so, I broke Gabby.
A direct version upgrade, and you still have issues.
Wall run, like the core mechanic of my game. After a week of banging my head against the wall and trying to solve it, I figured out what it was. Gabby's wall run casts a 0.
UE5 performance is awful as well, at least for AAA games. That's not necessarily true. What is awful is game developers being really fucking lazy and not optimizing their game. Because if you look at a game like Fortnite, Fortnite runs really well. This, I don't think, is inherently an engine problem. Now, there might be engine problems as well. But a lot of that is developers just basically cramming as much stuff into their game as possible.
Distant sphere trace to detect walls and use for her wall run.
Sure.
But in this new update, Epic had changed it so that casts with a distance of 0 would get ignored. And this wasn't in the patch notes or anything, so I had to figure it out by accident. Now, this might seem innocuous, and this isn't Epic's fault. This is just par for the course when you update any software in an existing...
No, it's 100% Epic's fault. If they make a change and it's not in the change notes, it's 100% their fault. There is no reason to make a change in a project like Unreal and not list it. That's stupid.
Project. But with enough of these little instances happening, it adds up and costs time. And at some point you have to ask yourself if the investment in time in fixing these little issues is worth having the latest version of the software. In my case, it wasn't worth it because...
Well, especially if you're not going to use the features.
All of the new features they were adding to the latest version weren't features I was actually going to use.
Yeah.
I was just upgrading for the peace of mind of knowing I was using the latest version.
And that is a cool animation style. I actually really like this. That's his game? Yeah, that's his game.
Worth it because all of the new features they were adding to the latest version weren't features I was actually going to use. I was just upgrading for the peace of mind of knowing I was using the latest version. And this is all just from upgrading between minor versions of Unreal 4. Could you imagine how much more complicated it could get upgrading from Unreal 4 to Unreal 5? But Raymond, what about all the new features? What about Nanite and Lumen and Metahuman and all this epic cool rendering stuff that's going to make your game look next gen and cutting edge? You're going to miss out.
We love having every game looking like it's real life. Yeah. Looks pretty cool. Reminds me of Spark the Electric Jester. What the hell did you... What is that? Spark the Electric Jester. I have never heard of this. Here it is. Oh, this is... Right, the Sonic clone. Yeah, no, I do remember this one.
Don't care, because my game doesn't need it. I'm making an anime-style game, okay? I don't need the latest cutting-edge graphical fidelity. And I think one
Honestly,
thing...
having this, to me, looks better than a lot of the games that come out. This has a very clear art style. This is going for, you know, that, like... It kind of looks like a PS2 anime game. And I mean that in the best way possible. This is a PS2 game made with modern dev techniques. Which is exactly, like, that sounds great to me. That is exactly what I look for in a game. That's awesome. I'm sick of seeing these games where their main selling point is, hey, look at the tongue physics. Like, I don't care. I don't care how well you've modeled the tongue. Show me the gameplay.
Those cutting edge
and
effects
this is gameplay.
Without a plan or an intention to actually use them is not a good enough reason to upgrade. Now, sure, I could upgrade the engine anyway, get some quality of life improvements, and turn off or just not use all of these cutting-edge effects. But this still bears a cost insofar as overhead. You know, just because those features are turned off doesn't mean they don't have an impact. Even just running the Unreal 5 editor on my machine is a lot more demanding to run than the Unreal 4 editor. And if the performance hit in even the test scene is this large, just with all the overhead of the new features, I can only imagine how much worse it would be for the customer. I could be wrong.
I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that. If UE is doing it the way, like, if it's working the way it should be like not compiling in things that you're not using. But it's entirely possible UE is just doing weird things. And I do know that just raising up the UE baseline does raise up your system requirements anyway.
But do I want to invest?
My success is also partially due to it that can run on most PCs. That's the success of Fortnite as well. That is 100% the success of Fortnite. It can run on literally a fucking potato. And it still looks good. This is a problem that Marvel Rivals has. It looks great. It's horribly optimized. And it's a problem they need to work on. They've improved it. It's still not great.
Invest the time to find out, or do I want to just continue on as I've been without problems? From a gamer's point of view, I just don't see the point in raising the minimum specs for my game for no reason.
Fair.
And sure, these are not bad features, but I feel like most of the time when people tell me about them, they're just charmed by the novelty. I've observed this behavior a lot in students who've been typically inclined to get super hyped and excited about the latest engine feature or the new latest update in whatever software it was. But a lot of the time, they would never end up actually doing anything with it. You know, they'd watch a few tutorials on it, they get pretty excited. But the novelty wears off pretty quickly when they notice the unintended consequences of some new feature. You know, I've unironically seen people champion that, oh guys, we don't have to do retopology anymore, we can just chuck in a high poly sculpt with nanite with no consequences. But I don't know, in my experience, there is always some trade-off, whether it's immediate or not. And when the bill comes due, that's when your motivation gets challenged. You realize that this new feature...
AAA game development in a nutshell. You embrace all of these features, you realize there are problems about a week before release, and you don't fix anything.
Isn't the silver bullet you thought it was. You realize that just adding Lumen and Nanite to your game doesn't put you on the same level as Crysis. And then you sit there waiting until the next new feature comes along, and maybe that'll be the new silver bullet this time. And then the cycle just repeats anew. And I'm not saying any new feature is bad.
It's almost like people made good video games when they didn't have this tech. Maybe, right, follow along with me. Maybe you can make a good video game with limitations. What? No way. No, that's impossible. There's no way there's any good video games on the PS2. There's no way there's good video games on the PS3. No. It's impossible. I always love when people talk about, like, the performance of the Switch. And people are like, oh, the Switch is so slow. It's slower than a PS4. Maybe so. But have you played some of the first-party Nintendo games? They clearly know what they're doing with that hardware. They know how to develop an art style around that hardware and make really good games with it. Crazy. Who would have guessed?
And that modern rendering is bad. There are some good games out there that have leveraged these. But these aren't good games because of their cutting-edge graphics. Technology is merely one ingredient.
Something more to stand out than just your graphics.
That you use the technology.
We back? Stream back? I don't know what the hell's happening.
Deliberately with intent.
Aussie internet syndrome, true.
This requires more than novel technology, but strong direction. And getting a scene to look good on purpose, even when using primitive techniques, is really hard to do. If you can't even do that with the basics, then when given anything more, you will be overwhelmed by the gamut of what you have to...
Yeah, no amount of like AI lighting, ray tracing, fucking fake frames is going to make this scene. No amount of this, like, auto-generated nonsense is going to make a well-designed level. Maybe one day. Don't get me wrong. It is entirely possible that one day we get to a point where you can just, say, make a Halo level, and it just makes a really good level. We're not at that point yet. And we're not going to be at that point for a while. And developer skill is always going to trump having fancy lighting features. I ran Celeste and Dead Cells on my old 4GB potato PC. Back then, it ended up being among my favorites. Those are 2D games, so obviously that's a little bit different. But yeah, even with 3D games, this is still an amazing game all of these years later.
To do with all these settings and sliders to get it to look good the way you want. And I think for most of us, that's just too much to handle. I think it's only the very exceptional that can wield all of that technology and make it look timeless. And I know this just from...
Actually, a really good example is Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. So, Ninja Gaiden 2 Black isn't actually a real remake. So, I found out that it just uses UE5 as the renderer. And the game underneath is actually Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2. So the core game underneath is a game from 2009, and then UE5 is just being used for like new lighting, new particle effects, things like that. But the actual game itself is 15 years old. Or I guess close to 16 years old now.
My experience with Unreal 4, you know, that still ships with a lot of modern rendering effects enabled by default that I didn't know how to use properly. I was annoyed that my game looked more smeary and desaturated and washed out than I wanted it to. And my ultimate solution was to turn all of those effects off, you know, to turn off the color grading, the tone mapping, the motion blur, the TAA, the bloom, the everything, so that I could have full control over the frame. And sure, my game might not look cutting everything, so that I could... the tone mapping, the motion blur, the TAA, the bloom, the everything, so that I could have
the state of game engines. This is how it wants to make the game look. Sure. Alrighty then.
Full control over the frame. And sure, my game might not look cutting edge, but I didn't want it to anyway, and now it looks more like the way I want it to look. But I think, broadly speaking, there is this real danger of us developers relying on cutting-edge and novel technology as a crutch, because we are insecure that our own work lacks merit. And trying to cover that insecurity up...
That's because oftentimes, if you're at a AAA studio, it does lack merit. Like, that's just a simple fact. A lot of the time, it actually is just shit.
Up with novelty and spectacle, it'll trick people immediately into thinking that your game is slick. You'll get a few Reddit upvotes for it. It'll charm people for a week. But once it comes out in the wash, when time passes and the novelty wears off, all that's left behind is the game's true merits. And if there's nothing there beyond novelty, it will be forgotten. Me personally, I have a vision in my head of what I want to achieve with my game. And UE5, Nanite, Lumen, MetaHuman, DLSS, whatever, is not part of that vision. if I'm at the stage where I need to rely on those to make a
This
good
looks really
game,
cool.
leaning only on the merit of novelty, then I've lost.
I kind of
If
want
you
the
have a
game now.
mission,
I
if you have
agree.
a project you got to do, and you constantly have the latest Unreal 5 feature showcase in your Twitter feed, it costs your time and attention, which is limited. And unless you have complete confidence in your project and you have the courage to say no to things, then you are going to be constantly tempted because you're going to have this.
Has he put a Steam wishlist up? If he hasn't, he's stupid. Okay, he has. Good. I was going to say, if you upload a video like this and you get 128,000 views, if you don't have your wishlist up, you are actually dumb.
Insecurity that, oh, well, maybe I do need this feature and maybe I will learn this thing and add it. All that mental energy and time you're spending keeping up with the epic games, that's like mental energy you could have spent actually working on your game. And again, don't get me wrong, this technology's good, but I think it's only good insofar as that you actually have a need to use it and it solves a problem you actually have in your project. Which, in my case, as far as I can tell, Unreal 4 might actually be a bit overkill for my game. I mean, I'm only here for the visual scripting and tools, and I don't see how Unreal 5 would solve any new problems that I couldn't already solve with Unreal 4. And for all those reasons, that's why I've stuck with Unreal 4, and will continue to stick with Unreal 4. Unless there's some new feature that comes out that actually solves a problem in my project and provides value beyond novelty. But until then, I just don't care. So I'm not saying don't use UE5 or that it's a bad engine. These are just my personal reasons why I'm not using it. And if you're an aspiring dev and you're just getting into things, don't stress out too much over like what game engine to use. I know there's a bit of a console war mentality going on with it. But honestly, man, I don't think there is an objective best
that's great
game
fan
engine,
art. What the
only
fuck?
the best engine for you. And the best engine for me is Unreal 4. If you enjoyed this video, consider supporting my work through Patreon, buying some Project Feline merch, or wishlisting Project Feline on Steam. Or just do all of those, that'd be awesome. Anyway, I'm gonna get back to it, and I'll see you in the next one.
This game looks awesome. Absolutely go, and I'll put the Steam link in the chat as well. Go and wishlist this game. I'm not logged in here. Give me a second. I'm actually going to do it over here. Project Feline. Add to your wish list. In case you don't know, wish listing a game does really help a developer. It brings them like higher in the Steam rankings. And when the game comes out, it allows them to actually, send out notifications to people, which of course is going to make the game get more attention as well. Yeah, so if you like the game, go and wishlist it. That looks really, really cool. Also, go check out the channel. I assume he's got other devlog videos here. Let's have a look.
When is Project Feline coming out? Or why?
Time or devs. Okay, so it's got a lot of like devlog sort of stuff in here. Your combat sucks. Wow, this guy is actually, he doesn't upload much, but I think he's got the YouTuber thing worked out pretty well. That's a great video. I'm definitely gonna keep an eye on that one when that comes out. That looks really cool.